of Pacific Telestations LLC. This message is brought to you by the stations of KUAM.
You're watching Buzz with Jess Lujan.
Good evening, Guam. I'm Jess Lujan. Welcome to this edition of The Buzz. This is part two, continuation, talking about federal receivership with the governor's chief policy advisor, Arthur Clark. Good afternoon, good evening, Arthur. How are you doing tonight?
Evening, Jess. Doing well, thank you.
You know what? Let me start off from where I left off last Wednesday in regards to GBB. David Manning said basically he got an OPA report that gave GBB himself a clean bill of health. Now, he said it was subjected to two GovGuam audits, basically, okay? Clean bill of health. But what that financial statement showed, that the OPA, they said that the GSWA's liabilities increased. In 2000, it increased by $9.8 million, or 89% during 2012, okay? From $10.9 million in 2011 and to $20 million in 2012. An increase. Now remember, he had full authority. He had, again, the checkbook, was writing the checks. We were giving him the money. He was writing the checks, supposed to be paying the bills. What the OPA report also showed that there were procurement violations. Procurement violation in the sense that there was a $100,000 contract that was amended to $900,000. Okay, $1.3 million contract amended to $8.2 million. $750 contract amended to $2.5 million. Now that's not it. This is the shortfall. When he first came aboard, he said, "Oh, there's enough money." We went out the bond. We thought this was going to pay for everything. Okay. The bond shortfall is the repayment. The shortfall comes to $75 million. The bond repayment. Order dump closure. That shortfall is $25.7 million. That's a shortfall. That's not a savings. The order dump post-closure care, that shortfall is $3 million. Lejeune land opening, the shortfall is $21 million. When you count the Lejeune condemnation that paid to the landowners based on tax credit, that was at $25 million judgment, $25 million shortfall. The total shortfall, again, that Mr. Manning, GBB, had full control. None of us, no GovGuam people, GBB, shortfall of $134 million. If you were to minus the judgment, it's $109 million shortfall if you don't count the condemnation cost.
Right. That's
Is that about right?
That's right. And you know, the pattern that we've detected here is whenever there's any criticism, GBB responds quickly and with the response, you know, there's a report that covers that. There's an OPA report that exonerates us or gives us a clean bill of health. And you know, in essence, the pattern we've detected is he's hoping nobody actually goes to the reports and looks at it. Because as you pointed out, you go to the OPA report, far from a clean bill of health, it shows they're operating in the red. They went from a $10 million liability to a $20 million liability. That's in other words, a deficit in that case. And as you pointed out, as the OPA report says here, it's primarily because of an increase in the due to the general fund. So they are not putting the money into the general fund that they're supposed to be putting in to repay the $200 million we borrowed. And as you pointed out, Jesse, they're supposed to be paying right now, per all the plans that were presented, $12 million every year. They're only paying $4.5 million. So they're coming up annually $7.5 million short. And that's why the liabilities for the Solid Waste Authority are mounting every single year.
Now, that being said, we talked about all the shortfalls. We talked about, again, the OPA report. Now, this is, I just took this out. Basically, this is David Manning's earnings, 2012, 2013. Now, you know, there's a move supposedly to increase the minimum wage here in Guam. Okay, when I'm looking at his earnings, okay, we are paying David Manning. All the other figures that I've mentioned, it's not inclusive of this. Okay, what we are paying David Manning on an hourly rate is $270.40.
Sounds right.
January to February, he has the hours here. The total amount of what we paid David Manning was $287,976.
In 2012?
In 2012. That is more. Now let me go into succession of leadership here in Guam. The governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the legislature. Succession of leadership, okay? David Manning in 1 year, in 2012, was paid more than the 3 highest succession of powers here in our government. 2013, that was up, and so happened, I don't know, who keeps his time clock? I mean, does he punch in? Because he has here from January to December, he has exactly 115.50 hours worked, exactly, I guess. And so every month, remember, we're paying him a rate of $270.40 per hour, okay? So every month we were paying him $31,231.20. So in 2013, we paid a total of $374.740 total for Mr. Manning's.
And he's one of 3.
One of 3.
One of 3 consultants that are getting about the same rate. So you're right. So that works out between the 3 consultants about $1 million annually for personnel costs.
For 3, and even when you look at the line of succession in the government of Guam, they don't even make that much.
Yeah.
It doesn't come to the year's salary of one person.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, and you point out an interesting fact there also is you know, I was a professional attorney. You know that you know I got paid by the hour, and I kept track of my time, and I was very meticulous about how I kept track of my time, and actually had a clock on the computer.
Sure.
I'd turn it on when I'd start and turn it off when I stopped. How Mr. Manning manages to have the identical number of hours down to the minute and down to the penny getting paid for 12 consecutive months should catch anybody's attention.
Sure.
And it makes you wonder if, in fact, you know, those times are accurate. But you know, Jesse, the point I want to make sure that the viewing public understands as you started the program out with is, you know, when GBB was hired to take care of our waste problem, I mean, we were sold a bill of goods that this was, you know, that we're going to go out, borrow this money, and everything will be paid, and we'll have, you know, a modern, well-run facility. And for the most part, we do. But what was not known at the time, or certainly is coming to light now, is what the cost is going to be. I think everybody understood. I certainly understood the $200 million we were going to borrow was going to take care of everything.
Sure.
You go through these shortfalls, as you just went through, $75 million, they're not paying the bond. $25 extra million to close ORDOT dump. $14 extra million to take care of the dump after it's closed. $21 million to finish these projects that are necessary, as he's quoted as saying, is necessary for public safety and for the safe operation of the landfill. $21 million. And the Ladzon condemnation, of course, that one I think surprised everybody, but that's an extra $25 million. That comes up to $130 million, 110 without the condemnation. When you ask him, how are we going to pay this back? Because that's not budgeted anywhere. You know, I pulled out some of his responses in his reports, and if I could read some of them. He says, it will be critical for the government of Guam to develop a plan to provide the necessary capital for the closure of cells 1 and 2 and design and construct at least 1 new cell at Ladzon. He's not even setting aside any money to close the 2 cells over at Ladzon or to open up any new ones. The government of Guam will have to go to the bond market again when it is time to pay for the closure of the current cells and the building of new cells. His answer? Go borrow more money. The government of Guam has added costs that is not required by the consent decree, which will require some additional fund if the work is to be completed. And the governor and the legislature, here's my favorite one. You know, he points out the fact that people have told him that we are at our debt ceiling. And yet he comes back and says the governor and the legislature hold the powers of the government of Guam, and it is through that power to set the debt limit, and the debt limit can be raised again. So go out, raise your debt ceiling, and go borrow more money to pay for this $100 million right now that nobody has any idea how we're going to pay for it.
There you go. Art, when you come back, I want to talk about David Manning as well as Chase Anderson as well. David Manning. His future employer was Columbia HSC, one of the companies that were involved or was investigated in regards to the largest Medicaid scam in U.S. history to the tune of billions of dollars. And Columbia Healthcare HSC made a settlement agreement with the federal government to the point of $1.7 million. David Manning was Senior Vice President. We'll talk about that when we come back.